The story begins with a vast, consuming inferno swallows the capital city, transforming the familiar streets below into a roiling sea of fire. Great houses belonging to the nobility crumble and burn to the ground, the destruction absolute as the scorching heat tramples everything in its path. The blaze threatens to swallow even the innocent lower town, the churches, and the academy, sparing nothing from its wrath. High above the devastation, a young woman in an elaborate gown floats amidst the embers, observing that the city has become a hellscape where no one can save the town. A man with long, dark hair stands amidst the ruins, his eyes sunken into deep darkness as they curve into a satisfied, chilling smile. The floating woman calls out to him, and he turns, revealing a visage that strikes her as both maddened and sorrowful. She believes that no one but her can save him now, acknowledging that despite the destruction, she has fallen into a forbidden love. The man asks if she will stand in his way too, but she descends toward him, vowing not to leave him alone because she is consumed by that love. Embracing amidst the sparks, the woman proposes that if their love is forbidden in this world, they should escape to a world 1,000 years in the future. She suggests a deep sleep, a maiden's secret art, that will wake them a millennium later. The man agrees, and they fall asleep holding each other tight inside a holy cocoon, engaging in a slumber that spans 10 centuries. While they sleep, the world is cleansed of nobles and flourishes with pride. Finally, they awaken together on the same hill 1,000 years later, gazing at each other perfectly content. The romantic atmosphere shatters instantly as the dreamer wakes up screaming, rejecting the conclusion with a roar that nobody is happy with that ending. The young woman sits up in her bed, trembling and clutching her blankets, realizing that the vision was merely a dream. She catches her breath, confused by the vivid nightmare, but as she scans her surroundings, she questions her reality. She creeps out of bed and approaches a large, ornate mirror, gasping as she recognizes the reflection staring back at her. The face in the mirror belongs to Iris, a character from the work Hanakoro. She processes the situation, identifying the world as the setting of When the White Flowers Bloom, also known by the nickname Hanakoro. This world is a school romance game set in a Western-style magic fantasy realm where the heroine aims to become the next holy maiden with the help of handsome men because the current holy maiden's power is running out. The woman recalls that the dream she just witnessed was actually one of the endings in that Otome game, specifically the so-called true and known as the 1,000-year sleep route. She inspects her arms, noting the severe scarring left by smallpox, a contagious disease with a high mortality rate within the Hanakoro setting. Iris caught the disease late last summer, and while she survived, the scars remain in very visible places. In this society, where appearance is paramount for a noble lady, pockmarks are interpreted as a sign that God has abandoned the victim, forcing her to usually hide them. Because the disease is contagious yet rarely spreads, those who catch it are stigmatized as being punished by divine retribution. The woman confirms without a doubt that she is Iris from that game, recognizing the unusual nature of the title even among Otome games. While it features standard love interests like princes, knights, and mages, the story forces the character of Iris to live a complex life burdened by her scars. She critiques the game's violent nature, noting that if the player fails to end up with anyone, every route concludes with the heroine getting stabbed in true bad endings. Even successful romances result in a Marabad ending, a portmanteau of merry and bad, where the greatest love is never rewarded. She reflects on her past life, where she died at 28 as a chill, slightly nerdy, game-loving woman. Back then, she preached the philosophy that true love lies in the Marabad ending and was thrilled with the story, even struggling through the 1,000-year sleep route without dissatisfaction. However, facing this reality now makes her want to cry, realizing that while real life is tough, it is not as tragic as this fiction. She admits she likes Marabad endings in fiction, but living as Iris, one of the holy maiden candidates and the heroine's rival, is a terrifying prospect. Iris de Chevalier is the daughter of the noble Chevalier house, a lineage of brave knights in the kingdom of Florzan. She is the one and only villainess of Hanakoro. In every bad ending, Iris is the one who stabs the heroine to death. Looking at her reflection, she laments that the developers crammed every villain trait into Iris, possibly due to a limited art budget for female characters. Just like the heroine, Iris has no happy future awaiting her. She stumbles slightly, her movements weak, and questions why a noble lady would carry a dagger around, calling it dangerous. She wonders why people in this game are so quick to stab each other, realizing that thanks to this violent tendency, ruin waits for her no matter what she does. A memory flashes through her mind of her father handing her a weapon, praising her and insisting that as a family of knights, a lady must know how to kill properly. Enraged by the absurdity of a parent training a little girl to stab people, she grabs a pillow and hurls it across the room, screaming, "Dad, you idiot!" The door creaks open just as she shouts, and a young boy enters, startled by the outburst and the flying pillow. He asks if she is feeling better now, and Iris recognizes the voice immediately. Standing before her is Nigel de Chevalier, Iris's twin brother and one of the game's love interests. His future as a knight is practically guaranteed, and as a result, he becomes close with the prince. Iris analyzes Nigel as the Chains of Love route target. Currently, he looks sweet, but she knows he trains at the palace with Marquis Chevalier, sparring with the princes, and was taught that a true knight's duty is to protect women. He was raised in a strict knightly family descended from heroes. In the game's narrative, when the holy maiden Camille appears, Nigel is attracted to her free-spirited, street-raised charm. The narrative of the game dictates that Nigel and the heroine, protecting and being protected, eventually fall in love. However, Nigel begins to believe he alone can protect her, leading to a dark turn where he carves a mark of ownership into her skin and binds her with chains. Because the holy maiden is seen by many men, Nigel's possessiveness escalates, yet the game claims the two, linked by unbreakable chains, live happily ever after, because the heroine feels fulfilled by that bondage. Iris shudders at the memory, thinking that tattooing the heroine and walking her around on a leash is incredibly creepy, questioning how such content passed the age rating. She acknowledges that the villainess in this route is naturally Iris, and her fate is even worse. In the Marabad ending, Nigel binds Iris in heavy chains over and over until she can't move, while in the bad end, Iris stabs the heroine for being unworthy of her brother. Other variations involve Nigel drowning Iris in a fountain and writing it off as suicide. Iris recalls that the game had a core male fanbase, perhaps because of the aesthetic beauty of the tragedy, recalling specifically how Iris's pale face sinking into the water with eyes wide in despair was considered almost beautiful. She cynically notes that Hanakoro's real selling point was the villainess's death scenes, as the developers put way more effort into Iris's execution CGs than the heroine's. Snapping back to the present, Nigel approaches her gently, patting her head and telling her not to overdo it. He observes that she still looks a little pale. Iris recoils internally, thinking she doesn't want that look directed at her, though looking is fine if she is the one doing it. She wonders how this sweet and gentle boy turns into a sadistic training knight, feeling that the tragedy is enough to make her cry. She acknowledges that while the Chains of Love route is a happy ending for the heroine, it is a Marabad ending from the outside. Iris decides that while she wants the heroine to be happy, she does not want to die either. She remembers that in the 1000-year sleep route, the result is mass death, including her own. A realization strikes her. If she is the villainess, she can change the outcome. Iris resolves to stop the Marabad ending. She decides that if she is going to be a villainess, she will do it properly by ruining the heroine's twisted happiness. She turns to Nigel, who asks what is going on because she startled him. With a determined expression, she announces that she has decided to go outside for a bit. Nigel, relieved and supportive, asks if she thinks she can manage a walk. He admits it has been boring not being able to spar with her. He encourages her, suggesting they build her strength little by little since she is still recovering. Iris agrees enthusiastically, but as she attempts to stand, her legs wobble and give out. Nigel catches her, and they decide to start by walking inside the house. As Nigel supports her weight, Iris inwardly declares the beginning of the villainous scenario rewrite. She vows to stop the Marabad ending and ensure that both she and Nigel find true happiness. Her ultimate goal solidifies. She wants to protect the gentle smile currently on her brother's face. At a corner of the Chevalier Marit, the estate where Iris and her family reside, water sparkles and dances around a newly finished white goddess statue. Nigel, Iris's twin brother, escorts her on a stroll to view the new fountain, which he and their father planned together specifically to cheer her up. However, Iris recoils in internal horror, recognizing this pristine structure as the very location where Nigel drowns Iris in the game. While she stammers out a polite compliment to her brother, claiming it is lovely, she inwardly rejects the grim irony of having tea while overlooking her future death scene. Seated at the garden table, Iris touches the choker around her neck, an accessory her father has made her wear since she was little. She realizes that this family tradition explains why Nigel thought to put a chain on the heroine in the game. He grew up viewing such adornments as expressions of affection, noting that their mother wears an even more ornate one as a sign of their father's love. Iris observes that while her mother is delighted to call it love, it functions practically as a mark of ownership, and normally, no matter how possessive one is, one does not go that far. The conversation shifts to social obligations, as the Marchioness Chevalier, their mother, notes that Iris is looking much better and should be ready for a tea party. In this world, nobles debut at a palace tea at 13 and generally enter the Royal Academy at 15. Before catching smallpox, Iris had looked forward to her invitation, but now she feels no desire to go at all. She dreads the event because the second love interest is at the palace, and she lacks the mental bandwidth to avoid his Marabad ending while already dealing with Nigel's route. Despite her reluctance and question of whether she must go, her mother insists, assuring her that Nigel will be with her and that she will get along with the host since they are the same age. The Marchioness addresses the lingering physical evidence of Iris's illness, pointing out that the scars are on her hands and can be hidden by gloves. Iris admits the pockmarks are embarrassing, but her mother dismissively states that at least they didn't scar her face and promises to have lovely opera gloves made to hide them. Iris accepts this decision with a sense of defeat, thanking her mother while internalizing that her mother does not truly listen. On the day of the palace tea party, Iris stands ready, but her father, Marquis Chevalier, stops her to present a gift. He hands her a dagger, instructing her to use it to defend herself if disgrace threatens her, reminding her that she is a daughter of the noble Chevalier house. Iris instantly recognizes the weapon as the stab the heroine item from the game and questions if giving it to her now is too early. When she suggests this is overkill for a tea party, her father counters that she trained for this and insists it is a safeguard, not a weapon. Nigel reveals he carries a similar talisman, reinforcing the family philosophy to be vigilant at all times, leaving Iris to sigh at their intensity. Iris steels herself for the inevitable encounter with the second love interest, Prince Reseda de Geyer, the target of the Love in a Cage route. In the game, Reseda is the most popular character, a gentleman absurdly adored by everyone, but his persona stems from an emptiness in his heart. After his brother died and he became crown prince, seeing how everyone's attitude changed, he stopped trusting those who approached him and learned to smile at everyone regardless of his true feelings. The narrative of the game dictates that the heroine appears unbound by status, shaking Reseda's heart because he is drawn to how she treats everyone equally. Even toward his fiancée, Iris, he remains detached, unable to fixate on any one woman until the heroine arrives. However, his route leads to a dark conclusion where he finds comfort in absolute protection, eventually confining the heroine in a prayer tower to serve as his wife in secret. In this Marabad ending, Reseda begs the heroine to devote her life to the kingdom as the Holy Maiden, effectively turning her into a decorative consort in confinement. To protect this twisted happiness and prevent the scandal of the Holy Maiden stealing a fiancé, Reseda steals Iris's voice, making it the only route where she isn't killed, but remains silenced. Iris vehemently rejects this future, deciding that stabbing people and losing her voice is not an option. She resolves not to get engaged, noting that the game never showed how the engagement happened and reasoning that if it wasn't a political arrangement between houses, perhaps the original Iris pushed for it. Remembering that the prince never showed he liked Iris in the game and treated her like a stranger, she formulates a plan to be disliked intentionally. At the palace, Nigel presents Iris to Prince Reseda, initiating what appears to be a template scene from the game while other noble girls watch and gossip. Reseda offers a polite, scripted greeting, mentioning that Nigel has told him about her and inquiring about her health. Iris cuts the pleasantry short, asking him to wait, and decides to be rude enough to be off-putting but not enough to be punished, hoping his gentle persona won't get mad over a minor impudence. Iris removes her glove and asks if she may let him take a closer look, revealing the scars on her hand. She anticipates the discrimination the game version of Iris faced, knowing that smallpox scars are viewed with disgust and that the original Iris took that humiliation out on the heroine. Reseda inspects her hand closely, noting the scars are healed, but instead of recoiling, he simply remarks that her gloves are lovely. Confused by his lack of revulsion, Iris stammers, trying to provoke a reaction by claiming there is nothing special about them. Reseda calmly offers to have the gloves cleaned and returned, but Iris declines. He then suggests that if she doesn't mind, she should keep them and unravel the fabric as it could be useful. When the noble girls whisper about the interaction being creepy, Reseda assures Iris that keeping them won't make her sick, but she should toss them if it creeps her out. He concludes the interaction with a polite apology for the disturbance and excuses himself. Left in the wake of the prince's departure, Iris panics, wondering if his kindness was only because she is a prospective fiancée or if she inadvertently triggered a doom flag by failing to make him angry. Nigel leads her away to a bench, asking if she is okay, while Iris frets that the situation is really bad. However, she reassesses the situation, realizing that with her scars, the nobles will deem her damaged and unfit for the royal family. Iris concludes that between the awkward encounter and her scars, the engagement flag with Reseda must be dead, causing her to celebrate internally. Nigel sits with her, offering to hide her scars if she doesn't want people thinking she is forsaken by the gods, but Iris declares that they don't bother her. She cheerfully thanks him, calling the scars bug repellent, because anyone bothered by them won't come near her in the first place. Nigel notes that she sounds almost happy about not being a candidate for fiancé, and Iris confirms that while her father might hope for a royal match, she certainly does not. Unbeknownst to her, Reseda watches the siblings from a distance, observing Iris's joy at the prospect of a dissolved engagement. The Marquis Chevalier bursts into the room, his face flushed with excitement as he brandishes an envelope bearing the royal seal. He announces that Prince Reseda has sent a personal invitation for Iris to visit the royal palace in a week's time. Iris, seated and composed, instantly rejects the proposal with a flat refusal, sensing the looming danger of engaging with a love interest. However, her father laughs off her resistance, misinterpreting her survival instinct for shyness, and insists she cannot refuse a royal summons. He suggests she take her twin brother Nigel for support and commands her to purchase whatever she needs for the occasion, steamrolling over her objections with boisterous paternal affection. Later, the Marchioness Chevalier frets over Iris's preparations, her face clouded with concern regarding her daughter's scars. She suggests hiring a skilled mage to cast an illusion spell to conceal the marks on Iris's arms. Iris freezes as she recognizes this suggestion as a catastrophic doom flag. She recalls that in the game, the original Iris used family influence to hire a mage who happens to be the third love interest, leading directly to a route of secrecy and ruin. Realizing that refusing the invitation might cause the mage to come to their estate instead, she calculates that venturing out is the lesser evil. She resolves to attend the tea party but decides to leave her gloves behind, choosing to face the world without concealment or magical subterfuge. Arriving at the royal palace with Nigel acting as her escort, Iris steels herself for the encounter. They are ushered into a grand parlor where Prince Reseda awaits, accompanied by another young man who bears a striking resemblance to him. Iris stiffens, recognizing the stranger as Crown Prince Blue de Geyer, Reseda's older brother. She performs a flawless curtsy, introducing herself while internally noting that she has never spoken to the Crown Prince before. Blue smiles warmly, telling her to dispense with formalities since she is Nigel's sister, and remarks that he heard the previous tea party was quite entertaining. Iris pales, realizing her heroic deed of exposing her scars has reached the ears of the future king. Blue leans in, his expression playful, and mentions that Reseda was in an unusually good mood after meeting her. Just as the conversation flows, Blue suddenly recoils, covering his mouth as a violent cough racks his frame. Reseda rushes to his brother's side, his face etched with worry. Iris watches the scene with clinical detachment, cross-referencing the game's timeline. She knows Prince Blue dies before the game's main story begins, and his current illness suggests the timeline is marching toward that inevitable tragedy. She shudders, fearing that his sickness might herald the plague that devastates the capital in the game's lore. Blue excuses himself to rest, leaving Iris alone with Reseda and Nigel. The atmosphere grows heavy, and Iris attempts to excuse herself, desperate to avoid deepening her connection with the love-in-a-cage target. Reseda, however, interjects with a gentle offer of cake, signaling for servants to bring in a selection of sweets. He recommends the strawberry tart, and as it is placed before her, Iris notices a ribbon tied around the stem of the fruit. Reseda shyly admits he tied it himself, a gesture that causes Iris to pause. As they eat, Reseda broaches the subject of their last meeting. He apologizes for the discomfort she must have felt exposing her scars in public, revealing that he kept the gloves she left behind. He admits that while he thought the scars might be unsightly, he found her strength in wearing them openly to be remarkable. Iris counters his apology with her own philosophy, stating that after facing death once, a scar on her hand seems trivial. She explains that she is simply grateful to be alive and has no desire to brood over what cannot be changed. Reseda watches her, his eyes widening as he processes her resilience, seeing a strength in her that contradicts the fragile image of a noble lady. The mood shifts abruptly when Res-Ida announces he has called for a royal court magician to join them. The doors swing open to reveal a man with long, dark hair and glasses, exuding an air of scholarly detachment. Iris barely suppresses a scream as she identifies him as City's Desaad, the third love interest and the central figure of the thousand-year sleep route. She recalls his tragic backstory, a man cursed by loss who eventually falls in love with his own half-sister, the heroine Camille, leading to a madness that drives him to burn the capital to the ground in a sea of magical fire. Res-Ida explains that he brought Cities to examine Iris's scars, hoping magic might offer a cure. Iris immediately rejects the offer, declaring that her scars cannot be healed. Cities, intrigued by her certainty, inspects her arm and confirms her assessment, explaining that magic cannot regenerate flesh once a wound has fully closed. Res-Ida presses for an alternative, and Cities suggests an illusion spell that could hide the marks for 2 weeks at a time. Iris vehemently refuses the illusion magic, recognizing the specific trap from the game. She knows that relying on temporary concealment forces the user into a cycle of secrecy, where the fear of the spell fading creates paranoia and dependency. In the original story, this dependency on Cities led to scandal and ruin when the secret meetings were discovered. She articulates her refusal to the princes, arguing that constantly renewing a spell would look improper and that she has no desire to live a lie. She boldly asks Cities if he has a lover, aiming to highlight the impropriety of a married man meeting a young lady in secret. When Cities confirms he does, Iris seizes the moral high ground, wishing them eternal happiness while firmly shutting down the route. Cities, impressed by her wisdom and practical acceptance of her reality, shifts his approach. He suggests that instead of hiding her scars, she might find a way to lessen them naturally by studying at the Magic Palace's extensive library. He offers to let her visit, framing it as a way to empower herself. Iris's eyes light up at the prospect of accessing the library, her gamer's soul thrilled by the lore potential. Res-Ida, seeing her genuine excitement, agrees to escort her there personally. As the meeting concludes, Res-Ida watches Iris with a contemplative expression. He compares her fortitude to his own mother, wondering if the queen could have survived her illness with such strength. Iris departs, satisfied that she has successfully dodged the love in a cage flag and potentially derailed the destruction of the capital by pointing Cities toward a mentorship role rather than a romantic tragedy. She vows to continue rewriting the Villainess's script, unaware that her actions are drawing the love interests closer rather than pushing them away. As spring yields to the early warmth of summer, a young noblewoman ventures into the lower town of the capital, having deliberately discarded her aristocratic vertical curls for a modest hood and braids to blend in with the commonry. She navigates the bustling streets with a singular purpose, her mind consumed by the intricate and dangerous plot of the game she now inhabits. Her mission is born of a desperate need to confirm a crucial detail regarding the lineage of Cities, a key character, for if the game's setting has shifted from her knowledge, disaster awaits. She recalls the tragic narrative of the game Hanakoro, where Cities and the heroine, Camille, unwittingly fall in love without knowing they share a bloodline, a forbidden path that leads inevitably to a merry bad end. Determined to alter this fate, she resolves to reveal their sibling status to them before they ever meet, severing the doomed romance at its root. The noblewoman reviews the intelligence she has gathered, confirming that an anonymous benefactor, likely Camille's biological father, has been supporting the girl who was raised by her aunt and uncle after her mother's untimely death during Camille's childhood. Arriving at her destination, she instructs her attendant to wait outside, steeling herself to enter the establishment alone. The shop bell chimes softly as she steps into the cosmetics store run by the heroine's guardians, her mind set on intervening in Camille's life as a self-proclaimed villainess destined to obstruct their love. She scans the interior, wondering if the heroine is present, but finds herself face-to-face with the shopkeeper instead. The shopkeeper, a bespectacled man with a mustache, welcomes the disguised noble, who feigns the excitement of a common girl seeking their famous product to maintain her cover. She requests the camellia oil, an item she recognizes from the game as a beauty item and healing specialty, pressed with devotion by Camille herself. As she purchases the bottle, she enthuses about finally trying the product, successfully playing the role of an eager customer. Mistaking her enthusiasm for personal connection, the uncle inquires if she is a friend of his niece, to which the noblewoman seizes the opening to ask for the girl's whereabouts. Learning that Camille is currently at the town church, she accepts her purchase and departs immediately to track down the heroine. Outside, white lilacs drift through the air, their heart-shaped petals evoking the game's visual motif, a beautiful yet melancholy symbol of the tragic romance between a town girl and a noble. The villainess observes the falling blossoms, noting how the game foreshadowed the tragedy from the very start through these flowers, reinforcing her resolve to shatter the narrative. Pushing open the heavy church doors, she spots the game's heroine, Camille Dubin, bathed in light and praying in the distance. Approaching the girl, who turns with a startled expression, the noblewoman requests a tour of the grounds, causing Camille to beam with a welcoming smile and readily agree. During their walk, Camille discovers a rare 5-petaled lilac among the blooms and excitedly offers it to her guest. The girl innocently recites the local lore that swallowing a 5-petaled bloom without a word ensures one will be with their beloved forever. The noblewoman freezes, recognizing this charm not as a blessing, but as the foreshadowing for the 1,000-year sleep route, a path of death she is determined to prevent. She realizes with horror that the game attempts to trap her even now, but seeing Camille's pure joy at finding the flower, she cannot bring herself to crush the girl's spirit. Camille clutches her chest, overjoyed at finding the rarity, while the noblewoman softens, assuring the girl that she possesses enough inherent strength to find happiness without relying on superstitious charms. Camille leads the way with infectious energy, her bright and lively demeanor charming the disguised villainess, who observes that the girl's genuine pleasantness makes her universal appeal undeniable. As they settle onto a bench, the noblewoman feels a pang of guilt, knowing she is about to stain this untouched canvas with a harsh reality the girl never asked to hear. She begins her interrogation gently, probing into Camille's past by asking about keepsakes from her late mother or knowledge of her father, confirming the secret lineage that binds Camille to cities. Pressing forward despite the pain it causes, she reveals that the amulet Camille holds bears the crest of the Earl of Sod, proof that her father is a man of high status with distinctive blue hair. She drops the final weight of the truth. Camille has an older brother, 10 years her senior. The villainess calculates that planting the seed of a blue-haired brother in Camille's mind now will force the girl to suspect her kinship with cities before romance can bloom, effectively severing the doomed red thread of fate. Though Camille questions the necessity of this burden, asking why she must know, the noblewoman remains resolute, knowing the alternative, 1,000-year sleep route leads to mass death. However, she offers a small mercy, lying to Camille that the Earl's wife passed away before Camille was born, ensuring the girl does not feel responsible for breaking a home. This revelation cracks Camille's composure, tears spilling as she confesses her lifelong fear that she was a child of sin, a burden to her aunt and uncle, and a nuisance whose very existence was a crime. Witnessing the girl's raw frailty, the noblewoman realizes Camille's friendly facade was a defense mechanism to ensure she was needed, and despite her resolve to remain a detached observer to avoid a bad end, she finds herself unable to turn away. Abandoning her distance, she reaches out, grasping Camille's trembling hands, and fiercely affirms that the girl is a precious life her mother traded everything to protect, erasing the stigma of her birth. As the noblewoman turns to leave, Camille attempts to ask her identity, but the villainess deflects, deciding it is safer for the heroine to remain ignorant of her savior's true name. Camille, her face wet with tears, beams with a dazzling smile worthy of a true heroine and calls out to her departing visitor as sister. The villainess, struck by the girl's radiance, resigns herself to the title, acknowledging the unbreakable bond she has inadvertently forged as the chapter concludes. Reflecting on her recent visits to the lower town, the noblewoman muses that a glimmer of the holy maiden already shines within Camille, speculating that the girl's creations are infused with holy power. She admits to becoming a regular customer at the shop, finding that Camille's oil operates on a level far superior to ordinary products. The villainess has officially integrated herself as a patron of the very heroine she intends to thwart. Back at her estate, Iris sits before her vanity while her attendant, Nigel, enters to announce that the carriage is ready. Nigel sniffs the air, intrigued by the pleasant scent permeating the room. Iris confirms it is camellia oil, noting that she finds its fragrance soothing, a sentiment Nigel shares. The brief moment of domestic calm shifts as Nigel produces a sheathed dagger, presenting it to his mistress. He confirms that he applied the seal exactly as she requested. As Iris attaches the weapon to her person, Nigel hesitates, reminding her that the blade was intended for self-defense. Iris dismisses his concern with a calm demeanor, assuring him she has no intention of actually using it. Despite her reassurance, Nigel watches her leave with a lingering worry, questioning if this course of action is truly safe. Iris arrives at her destination, the Magic Palace, a grand institution overflowing with knowledge and sorcery. She steps out to meet cities, who stands ready to guide her. He informs her that the time for being impressed is premature, as she must first undergo a test to determine if she can enter the magic academy at all. Cities gestures toward a massive, ornate magical circle, explaining that the palace is protected by barriers designed to repel intruders. He extends his hand, inviting her to place her palm against the circle. Iris complies, placing her hand on the shimmering barrier. Cities assures her the process will take only a moment. Suddenly, the barrier yields, and Cities looks on with widened eyes, momentarily stunned by the result. Recovering his composure, he welcomes her to the magic palace, congratulating her on her successful entry. As they walk through the palace grounds, Iris is captivated by the beauty of the gardens. Cities explains the architecture, noting that white doors lead to shared spaces like the library, while a specific blue door connects directly to his quarters. As they traverse the corridor, Iris remarks on the profound silence, noting that even the sound of bells echoes through the hall. She observes floating doors and questions if the different colors correspond to different destinations. Cities, however, is distracted by a strange anomaly. The air around Iris feels devoid of magic, yet she has breached the barrier. His thoughts are interrupted when Iris spots small, winged creatures fluttering nearby, fairies she recognizes from the game Hanakoro. The fairies swarm around Iris, prompting Cities to demand an explanation for their unusual behavior. He turns his scrutiny to Iris, pointing out the contradictions in her presence. She possesses no magic, yet she passed the barrier, she can see and hear the fairies, and she is carrying a dagger. Iris stammers a confirmation that she is indeed armed. Cities explains that fairies are typically kept secret within the palace and remain invisible to humans without magic, making her ability to perceive them an anomaly. He asks to inspect the dagger. Iris presents the weapon, drawing attention to the seal on its hilt. She explains that it functions as a charm, a self-binding seal to remind her not to use the blade lightly. She frames her possession of the weapon as a precaution, citing her status from a knightly house while emphasizing her desire to avoid conflict. Cities deduces that the magical barrier judged the dagger not as a weapon of aggression, but as a tool for protection, allowing her passage. Despite the explanation, Cities remains baffled that she can interact with the fairies. Internally, he finds it ironic that the girl who claims to dislike conflict is the same Villainess destined to turn the capital into a sea of fire in the game's original timeline. The fairies, enamored with Iris, ask for her ribbon. She happily obliges, suggesting they share it, which delights the creatures. In a burst of affection, the fairies press against her cheek, making a soft chew sound. Cities watches in disbelief, noting that even he does not receive such favor. He reveals to Iris that the fairy's affection is not merely playful but constitutes a blessing. He insists she cannot remain ignorant of this significance and recommends she study fairies formally. Iris beams, overwhelmed with happiness at receiving blessings from the creatures. Moving to the library, Cities asks what she wishes to learn. Iris's expression turns serious as she contemplates the future tragedy she knows is coming, the deaths of Prince Rosita's brother and Cities' lover in 2 years. She reasons that such simultaneous tragedies cannot be coincidental and deduces a massive epidemic is the culprit. She identifies the disease as smallpox, referencing pockmarks left on her own arm. Iris declares her intention to study the history of smallpox. She notes that it has been 100 years since the last major outbreak, leaving the world without established cures or prevention methods. Her goal is to analyze outbreak patterns to save lives and prevent others from suffering as she has. Cities, observing her intensity, acknowledges her as a brilliant and strong-willed young lady. Moved by her determination to tackle a plague that the rest of the country has given up on, he offers his assistance. Moments later, the fairies return, dumping a massive pile of books onto the table. Iris pales, protesting that she cannot possibly read so many volumes in a single day. Cities teases her, revealing that this stack is only the beginning. As the session concludes, Iris promises to return to continue her research. The fairies cheer for her return, marking the beginning of a small but significant encounter at the Magic Palace. Cities, the mage and guide to the Magic Palace, abruptly shatters the tranquility of their visit by announcing an unexpected detour. He informs Iris that their next destination is an audience with Prince Rosita. Iris recoils at the sudden change in plans, questioning the necessity of such a visit, only for Cities to reveal that the invitation to the Magic Palace had originated from His Highness himself. Iris realizes with a sinking heart that she cannot escape the prince's orbit, lamenting internally that she should never have made the request if it meant troubling him. though Cities assures her they are merely reporting on the day's events. She frets over her attire, conscious that she is dressed too plainly for a royal audience, but Cities dismisses her concerns, suggesting the prince will be pleased regardless. They arrive at the prince's location, where Res-Ida awaits them amidst a backdrop of blooming roses, greeting Iris with a statement that implies he has been anticipating this moment. Iris offers a formal apology for the intrusion, but her internal monologue betrays her as she is struck by his dazzlingly handsome appearance, which seems to radiate light. The group settles in for tea, and the prince wastes no time in addressing the peculiar events of the day, expressing amazement that he cannot yet see the fairies that Iris reportedly interacted with. He directly questions Iris about her ability to perceive the creatures and the rumor that she bestowed a blessing upon them. Res-Ida muses that typically, only someone akin to a holy maiden possesses the capacity to interact with fairies in such a manner, raising the question of whether it is possible to see them without formal magic study. Cities interjects, clarifying that while such a phenomenon is extremely rare, he would not deem it entirely impossible. He notes that, at present, he senses very little magical power emanating from Iris. Iris hastily agrees, insisting that her family lineage holds no strong magical power and denying any possibility of her being special, though the small fairies flutter around her, their eyes sparkling with affection. Cities cautions that certainty is impossible until her formal examination at the age of 16. Suddenly, the conversation takes a sharp turn as Cities leans in, his demeanor shifting as he detects a specific aroma. He asks Iris what she means by a sacred scent, realizing he can smell a distinct, holy aura radiating from her. The fairies confirm this, chiming in that the scent comes directly from her. Cities, driven by curiosity and the fairies' testimony, requests to examine Iris's left arm, causing her to flinch in surprise. Despite her hesitation, she consents, and Cities takes her wrist, focusing his senses only to find nothing but a pleasant fragrance. Iris flushes with embarrassment, and Res-Ida intervenes, sternly chiding Cities for taking his investigation too far given the propriety of the situation. Iris defends Cities' professionalism internally, acknowledging that despite the 10-year age gap making her look like a child to him, he should still maintain decency. Cities defends himself, insisting he is not lying about the sensation, speculating that perhaps she is using a special kind of oil. Iris seizes this moment of scrutiny as a tactical opportunity to manipulate the narrative regarding Camille. She confirms she is using camellia oil, a product rumored in the lower town to help heal scars, specifically applying it to the pockmarks on her arm. Her strategic mind races, calculating that if she can imply the holy maiden potential lies with the maker of the oil, Cities' sister, she can prevent the tragic incestuous romance between them. She emphasizes that the oil is a commoner's product, hardly something a holy maiden would typically use, but suggests that perhaps the artisan who created it possesses special power. She muses internally that if Prince Res-Ida had met Camille earlier, his engagement to Iris might never have happened, wondering if this small nudge can alter the course of their fates. Iris reflects on the lore of her world, recalling that only a select few are chosen as candidates for the Holy Maiden by the age of 15. These candidates are summoned to the Academy for evaluation, a process strictly for nobles, meaning commoners are barred from enrollment. Only the one recognized by the gods ascends to become the true Holy Maiden. She knows the truth from the game. Camille was adopted into a baron's family, becoming a noble in name to enter the academy as a candidate. Her magical power is a known fact because Camille carries the blood of Cities' father. Cities, intrigued by the mention of the oil maker, notes that the girl resembles him quite a bit and asks if they might be distantly related. Iris confirms she saw a beautiful girl with pale blue hair but feigns ignorance beyond that visual detail. Internally, she renews her vow to prevent the capital from burning down, viewing this manipulation of information as a critical life-or-death maneuver. To her relief, Cities seems to accept her explanation, and Res-Ida expresses an interest in visiting the shop himself. The tension shifts back to the social dynamics as Res-Ida pointedly asks Cities how long he plans to hold Iris's hand. Cities releases her immediately, apologizing for his distraction, while Res-Ida turns his attention to the bell on Iris's choker, asking if the constant sound bothers her. Iris admits she dislikes it, explaining she grabbed it out of habit and only wears it because it was her father's wish. She recalls her father's terrifying smile when he enforced the accessory, admitting she doesn't like it much herself. Res-Ida, however, compliments the sound, claiming it is lovely because it announces her presence, a remark that catches Iris off guard. Suddenly, Iris moves her hand, and Res-Ida catches it with surprising speed and strength, twisting her arm slightly in a display of self-defense mastery. He remarks that the Chevalier household evidently teaches self-defense to daughters as well as sons, apologizing for his reflex action. Iris, flustered and in pain, asks him to release her hand. Ida apologizes again for being sudden and invites her to sit, shifting the topic back to the bell. He asks if she wishes to remove the choker. Iris hesitates, stating she wants to but feels she cannot trouble him with such a task. Ida insists, suggesting that if she dislikes it, he should remove it for her. Iris considers keeping it to avoid conflict, but Ida presses, sensing her hesitation. She wonders if the Marquis would force her to wear it again if she returned without it. Ida offers a strategic solution. If he removes it himself, she can claim the prince ordered it done, which would carry more weight than her simply taking it off. Iris agrees to this logic, though she remains nervous. Ida leans in close, his presence overwhelming as his fingers work at the ribbon of the choker. The bell gives a final chime before falling silent as the fabric loosens. In this intimate moment, Ida whispers a request. She is to call him Ida, dropping the formal title. Iris stammers, overwhelmed by the sudden informality and the sensation of freedom as the choker comes off. She thanks him, addressing him as Your Highness, but he corrects her immediately, insisting on just Ida. Iris panics internally, thinking that dropping the title all at once is unrealistic and fearing that slipping up would be considered disrespectful. She views this as a potential trap, her eyes darting nervously as she questions the sudden change in his demeanor. She finds this new, assertive side of him scary. Ida softens slightly, agreeing that she is right and there is no need to rush, suggesting she call him without the title someday. He assures her they have plenty of time, a phrase that confuses Iris. Iris stares at him, baffled by the shift in his personality, and bluntly asks if he is a twin, noting he is nothing like the Ida she met the other day. Ida leans in, his handsome face inches from hers, and reveals that his previous behavior was merely his public face. He admits he sees no point in putting on airs with someone who can twist his arm, revealing that he is teasing her on purpose and is indeed holding a grudge about their physical altercation during their last meeting. Iris realizes with horror that the prince is petty enough to remember the incident vividly. Later, Iris returns home to Nigel, explaining the events of the day. She recounts that when she explained why the choker was missing, her parents scolded her initially, but upon hearing that the prince removed it, they did a complete turnaround and celebrated. They were giddy with excitement, interpreting the prince's action as a sign of favor. Iris laughs with Nigel, relieved that she didn't have to tell her father the truth about her hatred for the item. She expresses her genuine joy that His Highness took it off, reiterating how much she hated the feeling of the collar. Nigel, however, reacts strangely. He asks if she is sure it was okay to let Prince Ida take the choker. Iris declares she is now free, comparing the choker to a tag that marked her as her father's property, describing it as constricting. Nigel mutters a strange comment, asking if a bondage kink has blossomed, surprising Iris with his sudden darkness. He apologizes but admits he was a little jealous, envying her for having a special token from her father. Iris looks at him with concern, asking if he wanted the choker that badly. Nigel clarifies that his jealousy stems from the symbolism of being tied up, revealing a twisted desire for possessiveness. Iris, misunderstanding or perhaps choosing to ignore the darker undertone, offers to get the choker back from the prince if Nigel wants it, but Nigel declines. He notes that Iris prefers freedom, while he sees the choker as a proof of love, a sentiment his mother apparently shares. Iris vehemently disagrees, stating that flaunting a proof of love looks insecure and old-fashioned. She lectures Nigel, insisting that one shouldn't tie down the person they love. She argues that if hearts are truly connected, physical tokens of possession like chains or tattoos are unnecessary. Internally, she resolves to teach Nigel about healthy, typical relationships bit by bit, disturbed by his acceptance of twisted displays of affection. She wants him to experience a normal romance, free from such toxic symbolism. The chapter concludes with a shift to a mysterious scene in a forest. A figure with long hair and pointed ears, resembling an elf or spirit, looks down at the small fairies. The entity notices the ribbons the fairies are wearing and asks about them. The fairies happily chirp that Iris gave them the ribbons. The mysterious figure repeats the name, intrigued, identifying Iris as the night girl with the sacred scent, setting the stage for a new encounter. Iris stood amidst the towering shelves of the magic palace, having dedicated herself to visiting regularly to study Pox research and the nature of fairies. Since the day cities guided her to this sanctum, she had immersed herself in literature, though she sensed something was amiss with the existing records. While learning about Iris's Pox from a mage who studied fairies, she analyzed the climatic patterns recorded in the texts. She observed that Pox outbreaks seemed to surge in the summer following a warm winter, noting that the summer prior to the current cool one was recorded as cold. This correlation led her to fear that if the winter proved warm, the Pox might break out again in the following summer. Drawing upon memories of her previous world, she recognized the disease's similarity to smallpox and theorized that a vaccine could prevent it. The fairies fluttering around her recoiled in horror when she inquired about a medicine to prevent infection. Their tiny faces twisted with fear as they asked if she meant cutting the skin, a concept that terrified them. Iris admitted she had never performed the procedure herself, explaining that the smallpox vaccine involved scratching the skin and injecting the substance into the surface layer. She noted the logistical difficulties, aware that few would want such a treatment and even fewer could administer it, alongside the risk of spreading other diseases through poor hygiene. However, she recalled a documentary from her past life that showcased different vaccination methods, specifically one involving a powder inhaled through the nose. The fairies objected vehemently, crying out that scabs were poison and their use was forbidden magic. Iris countered their fears with scientific logic, explaining that if one removed the toxicity while leaving only the antigenicity, the substance became a vaccine. She tried to simplify the concept for the confused magical beings, describing it as taking the cause of the disease, removing the harmful poison part, and introducing it into the body to create a medicine that prevents illness. The fairies struggled with the terminology of antigens and vaccines, though they agreed on the toxic nature of scabs. Iris pondered if such a technique even existed in this world, theorizing that detoxifying the scabs could yield the vaccine she sought. A commanding voice interrupted her thoughts, remarking that she said interesting things. A tall, elegant figure with long hair and pointed ears materialized, questioning why she would risk her life to harvest Pox scabs. The being identified the act as a forbidden art, utilized only when one possessed the resolve to kill someone even at the cost of their own life. He loomed over her, asking if she truly possessed the resolve to go and retrieve the dangerous materials. Iris looked up at him with unwavering eyes, declaring that she did not need resolve to collect them. She admitted she did not know how to detoxify them while keeping the antigenicity, but she stated simply that she had already contracted the disease once and would not catch it again. The being expressed surprise at her statement, his stoic facade cracking slightly. He advised her to use magic, offering to lend her some of his own power. When Iris confessed she could not use magic, he demanded her name. Upon hearing she was Iris de Chevalier, the entity introduced himself as Soju, one of the fairy chiefs. Iris realized with a start that he was a fairy despite his human-like stature. She immediately pivoted back to her mission, asking if his magic could create the vaccine she envisioned. Soju dismissed the difficulty of the task, prompting Iris to explain the urgency of the situation. She revealed that among nobles, Pox rumors were suppressed, and cases were hidden away, citing that Iris herself had been isolated in a cellar until recovery. Iris emphasized that there were no Pox patients nearby and time was short. She explained the grim reality that commoners were driven outside the city to huddle in caves, as no healthy person dared approach them. She reasoned that if even nobles resorted to isolation, the situation for the common folk was catastrophic, and they had to stop it regardless of the cost. She internalized the timeline of the game, Hanakoro, noting that the Holy Maiden's power waned before Camille entered the academy, suspecting a massive Pox outbreak had overtaxed her sacred power. Determined to alter this fate, she listened as Soju promised to come for her that night to help her obtain the scabs. He instructed her to think specifically about how she would use them, promising to grant her power. Later, Iris focused intensely on the scientific process she needed to replicate with magic, culturing the virus, verifying efficacy, and figuring out storage for future outbreaks. She prioritized detoxifying the scabs while preserving antigenicity, acknowledging that she could not be a test subject due to her existing antibodies. Despite the myriad of problems and her memory of how difficult mass adoption was, she resolved to do everything she could, knowing it would not happen in a short time. When Soju arrived, Iris stood ready in full protective gear, startling him with her appearance. He reminded her that while she couldn't catch Pox, she was still susceptible to other illnesses, validating her precautions. Before they departed, Soju issued a warning that fairies were invisible to ordinary humans, meaning others would perceive her as being alone. He advised caution, and though Iris expressed confidence in her martial arts, he insisted on granting her his blessing as a precaution. He noted her knight's bloodline before leaning down to kiss her forehead, bestowing a protective enchantment that ensured nothing, not even disease, could harm her while the blessing held. Iris flushed at the intimacy of the ritual but accepted the protection. The sensation of the magic overwhelmed her, and she let out a startled laugh, which Soju interpreted as fear. He explained that those of knightly blood resisted magic more, feeling its strain more acutely. Iris cried out that she was indeed scared, but Soju delighted in her reaction, deciding they would travel in a primitive way. He whisked her away, and she screamed as they flew through the air towards the north capital. They arrived at the Black Forest, a desolate place where the dying waited in a cave. Soju landed them gently, and Iris asked permission to light a lamp before venturing into the darkness. Iris trembled as she approached the cave mouth, knowing that those who caught plagues in town were dumped there. Her body shook uncontrollably with fear, but she forced herself to acknowledge the horror rather than turn a blind eye. Inside, the scene was grim, with the sick lying on the cold stone floor. Iris approached a mother holding a child, offering them water with a bit of salt. The mother drank gratefully, and Iris, steeling herself, made an impertinent request for the child's scab. The mother looked confused, but Iris focused on her condition, realizing the woman had caught the disease recently. The mother wept, expressing her despair over what would happen to her child if she died. Iris examined the mother and asked if she would take a chance to be saved. She explained her plan to have the mother inhale the scab, admitting it was a gamble and she would be the first subject. Iris promised to use magic to remove the disease's poison, hoping it would keep the symptoms from becoming severe. The mother, wanting to choose life and not leave her child lonely, agreed to trust Iris. Iris thanked the woman and turned to Soju, who instructed her to wish strongly for what she wanted to happen inside the vial. Holding the vial containing the scab, Iris concentrated with all her might, wishing for it to be detoxified, stored safely, and preserved as a vaccine. Soju lent his power to grant her wish, and the magic took hold. The mother inhaled the treated substance, but remarked that nothing felt different yet. Iris explained that it was not a cure that healed instantly but a preventative measure. She promised to come back and check on them regularly, leaving the camellia oil she had brought. As the reality of her actions spread through the cave, other survivors surrounded them, their faces twisted with anger and desperation. They demanded a cure and medicine, not prevention, asking what more she intended to take from them after they had lost jobs and families. They accused her of turning a blind eye to their suffering and demanded to know why she wanted their scabs at death's door. Iris pleaded for their cooperation, insisting that a preventative made now could save families in the future. The villagers scoffed, pointing out that prevention didn't make it in time for them and accusing her of never having had the disease herself. Iris silenced them by revealing she had indeed survived the disease, stating she was the same as all of them. The atmosphere in the cave shifted as the villagers processed this revelation. A man stood up, declaring he was done sitting around scared and waiting to die. He reasoned that if there was even a slim chance to live, he wanted to try, and offered his scab to be used. Others followed his lead, realizing they had been desperate and grasping at straws, and thanked Iris for giving them a purpose. As Iris collected the materials she needed, Soju alerted her that there was water nearby. He led her deeper into the cave to a spot where water trickled down the rock face. Iris lamented that the spring didn't come out farther from the rock, making it difficult to draw water with their current equipment. Soju suggested that a hard tube could solve the problem. He instructed her to wish for it as she had done before. Iris hesitated only a moment before offering the scabbard of her sword. Soju asked if she was sure, noting its ornate nature, but Iris insisted she didn't need it anyway. Amused by her practicality, Soju accepted the scabbard. Iris wrapped the handle with cloth to create a seal. Soju used his magic to cut the tip of the scabbard cleanly. He then thrust the modified scabbard into the rock face where the water trickled. The result was immediate. Clear water gushed forth like it was coming from a faucet. Iris marveled at the convenience of magic. Soju reminded her that they were unseen, explaining the mechanics of his materialized form. With dawn approaching, Iris turned to the villagers and told them to go tell everyone about the clean water source. The abundance of clean water marked a bright sign for earthenpox prevention, and Iris felt a surge of hope as she prepared to leave the cave. Iris sat in the opulent setting of a royal tea party, her resolve as a villainess momentarily crumbling before the allure of confectionery perfection. She gazed at the slice of cake before her, admitting internally that the treat Prince Reseda provided was so exquisite she found herself unable to refuse his invitation. Having just completed her daily smallpox studies at the nearby Magic Palace, she had accepted his offer for tea, drawn in by the promise of a new seasonal cake. As she indulged, her mind drifted back to the dark, damp caves of the Black Forest. Since the incident where she first administered the experimental treatment, she had compelled Lord Soju to transport her there regularly. She noted with clinical satisfaction that the vaccine's effectiveness had been confirmed. Those who inhaled the detoxified scabs were recovering well. However, her visits were clandestine, conducted under the cover of night to quietly drop off supplies, as she maintained a low profile. A significant logistical hurdle remained, haunting her thoughts even amidst the luxury of the palace. Only high-ranking mages with immense power, or perhaps holy maidens, possessed the capacity to replicate the detoxification process. The problem of mass production loomed large, for the vaccine could not be manufactured consistently without such power. Iris recalled her attempt to recruit Lord Soju for continuous production, only to meet a cold refusal. The fairy chief had stated bluntly that he only assisted because it was her, Iris, who asked. He expressed zero concern for the fate of humans other than her, declaring their survival irrelevant to him. Iris had tried to reason with him, arguing that if no blessed humans remained, his own power would eventually vanish, but Soju merely shrugged off the logic, leaving the root problem unsolved. Back in the present, Prince Reseda's voice sliced through her rumination. He sat across from her, his demeanor shifting from the casual host to something far more intense. He spoke of rumors reaching the capital, whispers of a saint of the Black Forest, who appeared in the caves. Iris stiffened, her heart rate spiking as he described the rumors. A saint with curly green hair who appeared from nowhere at night, surrounded by soft light, and vanished before dawn. She attempted to feign ignorance, suggesting it might have been a dream or a hallucination born of the darkness. Reseda, however, was not easily swayed. He signaled to his aide, Nigel, who produced a physical object wrapped in cloth. Nigel revealed a dagger's sheath, noting its intricate craftsmanship was unmistakably in the style of the Chevalier house. He added, with a knowing look, that he knew a green-haired girl who tended to do reckless things, calling it a funny coincidence. The evidence was damning. Nigel confirmed the sheath definitely belonged to Iris. Iris felt the walls closing in. The prince's expression darkened, a rare display of genuine anger that exceeded anything she had seen from his character in the game Hanakoro. He demanded an explanation, dismissing her weak attempts to deny the saint title. He pressed her, stating that even for a knight's daughter, venturing into such a dangerous place alone at night was unacceptable. He cornered her with a direct question: what exactly was she doing there? With no escape, Iris confessed. She admitted she was collecting smallpox scabs for prevention research. Reseda analyzed her statement instantly, deducing that she must have an accomplice. He reasoned that someone without magic could not accomplish such feats of travel and logistics alone. His suspicion immediately landed on Cities, the bespectacled mage, and he accused Iris of protecting him. He ordered Nigel to call for Cities, assuming teleportation magic was involved. Iris panicked, desperate to keep Cities out of the line of fire. She insisted it was her idea and that Cities had nothing to do with her reckless actions. She struggled to find a way to de-escalate the situation without revealing her actual supernatural benefactor. Suddenly, a voice cut through the tension. Lord Soju materialized in the room, expressing his disdain for the behavior of human children. Reseda and Nigel froze, their eyes widening as they perceived the fairy chief. Soju, towering and ethereal, addressed Reseda directly, acknowledging him as the king's son and Nigel as the knight's offspring. He commanded Reseda to raise his head, disliking the formality. Reseda, recovering his composure, recognized Soju from legends as one of the fairy elders, a being of immense power. The situation took a bizarre turn as Reseda processed the revelation. He realized that Soju was the one who took Iris to the Black Forest. His mind, seemingly primed for worst-case scenarios regarding his fiancée, jumped to the conclusion of infidelity. He stammered, asking if this was adultery. Soju, amused, observed that the king's son suspected his lover of betrayal. Iris vehemently denied the accusation, shouting that she and Prince Reseda were not anything like that yet. Reseda, looking crushed, slumped in his chair, muttering that she didn't have to deny it so strongly. Soju cleared the air, stating firmly that he was with her solely to grant her wish and that no illness could harm Iris while he was around. Reseda's focus shifted back to the medical implications. He recalled Iris mentioning a vaccine earlier and asked for clarification. Soju explained it was a medicine to prevent smallpox and that Iris had been manufacturing it. With the misunderstanding resolved, Soju announced he would depart, leaving a stunned silence in his wake. Reseda, drained by the encounter with a legendary being, slumped over the table. Cities, who had arrived amidst the chaos, adjusted his glasses and asked Iris to explain the situation from the beginning. Iris took a breath and dropped a bombshell. She predicted that smallpox would spread massively the following summer. When questioned on her certainty, Iris cited historical records and books from the Magic Palace, explaining that smallpox outbreaks were linked to climate shifts. She noted that current conditions matched those of past epidemics. She theorized that starting prevention now could drastically reduce future damage. She explained her hypothesis that powder from the scabs could prevent infection. Reseda listened intently, then gently took her hand. He asked her to tell him everything, her knowledge, her troubles, and her goals. He implored her to look at him and promised she didn't have to do it alone. He declared his belief in her, a statement that moved Iris deeply. Iris revealed the vial containing the vaccine. She explained that she needed magic to turn the scabs into a vaccine because she lacked magic herself. She presented the vial, confirming it had been detoxified by Lord Soju and would not cause illness. Cities, examining the vial, verified that it was indeed detoxified. Iris then voiced her primary concern. Before detoxification, the material was infectious. She asked Cities if he could analyze the spell Soju used and reproduce it in a magic circle. Cities acknowledged the difficulty, noting it seemed to combine several complex spells, but deemed it theoretically reproducible. This confirmation brought immense relief to Iris, as it meant they could move forward with production. The conversation shifted to distribution strategy. Cities pointed out the obvious flaw: no healthy person would willingly inhale smallpox scabs. Nigel agreed, noting that most people would refuse the risk. Iris countered that the people in the caves accepted it because they were desperate to live. Reseda stepped up, declaring he would handle the nobles himself. They brainstormed a tiered approach. Reseda suggested charging the nobles but offering it free to any townspeople who wanted it. Iris proposed encouraging families of the recovered patients to try it first, building trust through word of mouth. Cities estimated that with testing, creating the magic circle would take about a week. Iris made one final request. She asked to remain anonymous regarding her involvement with the vaccine. She explained that the method was based on forbidden magic. If people realized she was using such techniques, they might view her as dangerous or having bad intentions. Reseda and the others agreed to protect her secret. Overwhelmed by Reseda's competence and kindness, Iris marveled at how much nicer he was than his game counterpart. She thanked him profusely, thinking him a true prince. The meeting concluded with a renewed sense of purpose. Later, in the grand halls of the Florzen Kingdom, Prince Reseda approached the throne. He walked with determination toward the king, announcing he had a proposal to make. The king commanded him to speak, setting the stage for the next phase of their plan to save the kingdom. Amidst the opulent grandeur of the royal council chamber, a tense debate over the kingdom's survival unfolds as the looming threat of a smallpox outbreak casts a shadow over the court. The bearded minister, his face etched with skepticism and authority, dismisses the proposed solution with a stern countenance, arguing that if the rumors of the plague are true, the only recourse is to summon the mages immediately rather than rely on unproven methods. He vehemently rejects the notion of trusting a remedy rooted in what he perceives as forbidden magic, his hand raised in a gesture of absolute refusal. Reseda, standing small but resolute before the imposing figures of the court, listens as the minister declares that he cannot approve of something so dangerous and devoid of historical record, his voice dripping with incredulity at the idea of transforming poison from scabs into medicine. The minister asserts that the king would never sanction such a reckless experiment, questioning Reseda's judgment with a piercing glare. The atmosphere in the room grows heavy with dismissal as the minister attempts to wave the topic away, urging the council to move on to the next matter, his hand signaling the end of the discussion. However, Reseda, his expression shifting from polite endurance to steely determination, offers a sharp thanks before deciding that words alone will no longer suffice. With a swift, decisive movement that catches the entire court off guard, he produces a container holding the controversial substance. Ignoring the shocked gasps of the onlookers, Reseda proclaims that he will prove the safety of the method himself. In a single, fluid motion, he brings the vessel to his lips and inhales the dried scab material, effectively inoculating himself before the horrified eyes of the assembly. Pandemonium erupts within the chamber as the minister and the gathered nobles recoil in terror, shouting accusations of madness and fearing for their own safety. Res-Ida coughs violently as the powder enters his system, his body reacting immediately to the foreign substance, prompting cries of alarm from those witnessing his reckless gamble. Even the stoic, long-haired Cities watches with a mixture of shock and concern as the young prince staggers. Despite the physical discomfort and the uproar surrounding him, Res-Ida maintains his composure, a defiant smile playing on his lips as he challenges the minister. He asserts that if he survives this ordeal unscathed, the effectiveness of the method must be acknowledged, staking his very life on the success of the vaccine. The sheer audacity of the prince walking a path forsaken by the gods leaves the court in a state of stunned disbelief. The consequences of his actions are immediate and severe, as the council deems him a biohazard to the royal family and the court at large. The authorities declare that Res-Ida must be placed under strict quarantine to prevent any potential spread of the disease. Accepting his fate with a calm grace, Res-Ida issues a single request before his confinement begins. However, Iris, refusing to let him face this isolation alone, interjects with a fierce determination, declaring that she will accompany him into quarantine. Her proclamation shocks the court, with Res-Ida himself looking at her in bewildered surprise. In the carriage ride to their isolation, the gravity of the situation settles in, but Iris remains steadfast in her decision, despite Res-Ida's attempts to dissuade her. She rationalizes her presence by claiming that she wants to ensure she receives proper credit for the vaccine's development, arguing that leaving him alone would make it appear as though he stole the achievement. Yet, beneath this pragmatic facade lies a deeper desire to be his accomplice and support system. Res-Ida, his expression softening into a melancholy smile, dismisses his own value, stating that as the second son, his life is expendable because his brother remains to inherit the throne. This casual disregard for his own existence ignites a spark of fury within Iris. Overcome with emotion, Iris slams her hands down, shouting at him to stop speaking such foolishness. She expresses her frustration and sadness, demanding to know why being the second son dictates his worth. Grabbing him by the shoulders, she fiercely declares that there is no one who could ever replace him, her voice cracking with the intensity of her feelings. She confesses that she cannot stand hearing him talk about himself as if he were merely a spare part to be discarded. Her outburst leaves Res-Ida stunned, his eyes wide as he processes the depth of her care. The tension breaks as Res-Ida, touched by her passionate defense, lets out a small, genuine laugh, admitting that for a moment, he felt truly happy. He teases her, noting that amidst her anger, she called him just Res-Ida, without any honorifics, a first in their relationship. This observation flusters Iris completely, her face turning a deep shade of crimson as she realizes her breach of etiquette. She stammers apologies, horrified that she spoke so informally to royalty, but Res-Ida merely smiles, enjoying her reaction and asking her to say it again. He assures her it is all right, but Iris, overwhelmed by embarrassment, flees the room, leaving Res-Ida chuckling at her retreat while she internally screams for help. Their interaction is interrupted by the arrival of Lord Soju, an elven figure of ethereal beauty, who observes the scene with amusement, asking if he has interrupted a lover's quarrel. Iris vehemently denies any such romantic entanglement, though her flushed face betrays her agitation. Soju, unperturbed, comments on Res-Ida's bravery for inhaling the vaccine himself, admitting that he could not resist lending a hand to a prince with such guts. He reveals that he has already spoken with the Orange Fairy Chief, the protector of the king, ensuring that the truth of the vaccine's safety will reach the monarch soon enough. Iris thanks him profusely, though she finds his demeanor and the sudden involvement of fairy chiefs slightly bizarre. Soju dismisses her gratitude, stating that he merely wants to be entertained by the interesting events unfolding before him. 2 weeks pass in the blink of an eye as Iris and Res-Ida settle into life at the Chevalier family's detached residence. Since Iris had previously survived smallpox, she takes charge of caring for Res-Ida, and the two grow comfortable in their shared domesticity. The days are filled with quiet moments, from Res-Ida enjoying the peaceful life to Iris observing his studious nature as he pores over books about fairy lore. Res-Ida explains the intricate hierarchy of the fairies, describing how each of the 7 chiefs wears embroidery matching their color and name, and possesses distinctively colored wings, allowing one to identify them instantly. He emphasizes the importance of respecting royal traditions and never angering a fairy, revealing a depth of knowledge that surprises Iris given their shared age. Their conversation shifts to the future as they discuss the Royal Academy, which requires enrollment for all nobility. Ida suggests it would be fun if they attended together, a sentiment that Iris privately agrees with, though her mind is preoccupied with the strategic necessity of the academy for her survival in this world. She internally lists her objectives: avoiding a bad ending, staying close to Camille, preventing Nigel from becoming a sadist, and stopping Ida from going down a Yandra route. Snapping back to reality, they realize it is time for their physical training and rush to the garden. In the garden, the clang of wooden swords rings out as Iris and Ida spar with intensity. Ida asks if his ability to match her style has improved, and Iris acknowledges his progress, noting that his judgment is quicker than when they started. However, she internally critiques his strength, determining that she cannot afford to lose in a contest of pure power. With a surge of force, she overwhelms his defenses, telling him he is still too soft as she drives him back. Ida admits defeat, acknowledging that he still cannot beat her, but their training is cut short by the sudden arrival of Cities. Ida reacts with shock, calling out "brother," as Cities approaches with a warm, relieved expression. Cities immediately pulls Ida into a tight embrace, asking why he is holding back, but Ida recoils, demanding not to be touched. The reunion takes a surprising turn as Iris learns the truth about the events preceding Ida's quarantine. It is revealed that Cities had actually inhaled the vaccine himself as a test and precaution before Ida ever did, effectively proving its safety in secret. Consequently, Cities had also been placed under house arrest, explaining his absence and the delay in resolving the situation. Iris is flabbergasted by this revelation, shouting that Cities doesn't even look sick and questioning the logic of the entire royal family risking themselves so recklessly. It turns out that when Cities was confined, the fairies became furious at the treatment of the royal bloodline and sealed off the magic palace entirely. A noble had foolishly claimed the palace was tainted, prompting the fairies to shut the gates in divine retribution. Iris is aghast at the chaos, mentally screaming that Cities should have used protection spells or asked the fairies for help instead of causing such a diplomatic disaster. Lord Soju and the other fairies had eventually intervened, and thanks to the Holy Maiden's mediation, the confinement was lifted and the magic palace reopened. A flashback reveals a small, angry fairy threatening to go boom next time if the humans didn't apologize, highlighting the terrifying nature of these magical beings and the necessity of maintaining their favor. Cities explains that the royals apologized to the fairy chiefs, securing forgiveness and restoring order. Now, Cities has come to take Ida home, stating that the family is waiting for him. Ida agrees, a look of relief and happiness washing over his face. Before they depart, Iris seizes the opportunity to ask Cities a favor regarding the vaccine. She requests the vaccine for Prince Blue, another royal figure known for his physical frailty. Cities listens intently as Iris explains that the palace would likely forbid the procedure if she asked directly, but she believes Prince Blue needs it more than anyone due to his duty to lead others. Moved by her concern and reasoning, Cities agrees to ask on Prince Blue's behalf. Suddenly, a new figure emerges, a stunning fairy with golden embroidery and floral patterns, identified as Komomi, the Blue Fairy Chief and Guardian of Prince Blue. Iris is struck by her beauty, comparing her to Lord Soju. Komomi smiles sweetly at Iris, calling her a sweet child, and readily agrees to bring the vaccine to Prince Blue immediately, removing any bureaucratic obstacles with fairy magic. As the carriage prepares to leave, signaling the end of their isolation, Ida turns to Iris one last time. He notices she is relieved that Prince Blue will be safe, allowing them to finally rest easy. In a moment of vulnerability, Ida brings up the incident from the beginning of their quarantine, recalling how she told him he was irreplaceable. He confesses that he was incredibly happy that she got angry for his sake, a sentiment he hadn't been able to express properly until now. The experience has drawn them closer than ever, solidifying a bond forged in crisis. As they part ways, Ida asks to study together again sometime, to which Iris, smiling warmly, agrees, marking the conclusion of their shared trial. The pristine, sunlit corridors of the Chevalier estate, where a trio of maids flushes with excitement, their hands clasped in adoration as they gossip about the developing bond between the young masters. They describe the sight of Ida and Iris together as akin to witnessing angels at play, their imaginations running wild with romantic possibilities regarding the future of the Marquis's household. One maid reprimands another for speaking too freely, though her own cheeks burn with delight, speculating that an engagement might be on the horizon. They fawn over Prince Rosida's wonderful demeanor, expressing surprise at the depth of intimacy he shares with the young lady of the house. A few days have passed since Rosita's return to the royal palace, and the political landscape regarding the epidemic has shifted dramatically. With the direct intervention and approval of the fairy elders, the vaccine has received official sanction, moving from a controversial experiment to a state-sponsored initiative. Rosita, cities, and Prince Blue have all emerged from the ordeal in good health, a testament to the treatment's safety. Consequently, the Crown has appointed Rosita to oversee the cultivation and storage of the vaccine under strict royal management. The Magical Palace's Special Magic Division has assumed control over development and distribution to meet the rising demand, ensuring the remedy spreads quickly among the populace, starting with the young people within the palace. Notably, Nigel, utilizing his proximity to the royal family, has taken the lead in receiving the vaccination, setting an example for the nobility. In the quiet of her study, Iris pores over a book, her mind occupied with admiration for Rosita's selfless efforts that have brought the kingdom to this point of stability. She asserts internally that he possesses the qualities of a supervising prince, yet a shadow of worry crosses her face as she recalls the timeline of the game. She calculates that the main storyline hasn't even commenced yet, but Rosita's recent words echo a specific line from the game, Hanakoro, originally intended for the heroine. This realization triggers a wave of anxiety about triggering a flag that could doom them, and she resolves to do everything in her power to prevent the plot from advancing down a tragic path. Her strategizing is interrupted by a rhythmic knocking at the door, followed by a maid announcing that dinner is served and the master of the house awaits her presence. The scene shifts to the dining hall, where the Marquis, Iris's father, greets her with a jovial, wine-flushed grin. He drops a bombshell with casual delight. Iris's name has been nominated as a candidate for the position of Holy Maiden. He adds that Prince Rosita himself asked the family to confirm her feelings on the matter. Iris freezes, her internal alarm bells ringing deafeningly as she realizes that her earlier fears were justified. A flag was raised the moment she acknowledged the possibility. The Marquis, oblivious to her internal panic, leans in with a conspiratorial whisper about her feelings regarding an engagement, prompting Iris to vehemently deny any such desires with a shout that rattles the silverware. Iris grips her skirt, frustration bubbling over as she perceives the game correction force attempting to violently shove her back onto the original story route. Refusing to submit to this predetermined fate, she decides to fight back against the narrative. She adopts a mask of sorrow, lowering her head and trembling theatrically as she argues that she cannot go to the palace to become a spectacle. She touches her face, claiming that her pox scars are visible proof that she has been abandoned by the gods, and that marrying her would be an act of defiance against the divine. She implores her father to protect her from the cruel whispers of high society, citing the gossip she has already endured. However, the Marquis remains terrifyingly optimistic. He dismisses her concerns with a wave of his hand, assuring her that if she becomes the Holy Maiden, all those problems will vanish. He pats her head condescendingly, telling her there is nothing to worry about. Iris, losing her patience, snaps back that their family has never produced a Holy Maiden in its history because they barely possess any magical power. She calls her father a dummy for ignoring reality, but he merely smiles and suggests she can be the first, displaying a level of optimism that Iris finds utterly exasperating. The conversation turns to the competition. Iris asks about the other candidates, and realizes with dread that there are 3 candidates this time, whereas the game only featured 2. She laments that the plot is moving forward again, introducing new variables. Her mother chimes in, noting that one rival is from another Marquis family, while the father dismissively mentions that the third is of low birth and likely won't even qualify for the academy. The Marquis then swirls his wineglass and darkly suggests that if Iris simply overpowers them, there won't be a problem. Iris stares at him in horror, stammering the word murder, fearing her family is planning an assassination. The Marquis laughs heartily at her terrified expression, clarifying that he appreciates her spirit to achieve goals at any cost, but corrects her assumption. He lectures her on their knightly lineage, stating that she must challenge her rivals to a fair duel. He boasts that a duel between noble ladies would be a scandal, but more importantly, he claims there isn't a single noble lady who could beat Iris in a fight, making it an unfair contest from the start. Iris sighs, relieved that they aren't resorting to assassination, but internally calls her father a sly old man for his roundabout way of thinking. While Iris and her parents continue eating, Nigel sits silently, his hand gripping the fabric of his chair in white-knuckled tension. Later, the silence of the garden is broken by the sound of a heavy wooden sword cleaving the air. Nigel practices his swings with intense focus, sweat dripping from his brow as he executes repetitive drills. A noise from the bushes distracts him, and he glances over, wondering if the holy maiden candidate, his sister, is approaching. He lowers his weapon, a melancholy expression crossing his face as he ponders how, despite being twins, he and Iris ended up on such divergent paths. Nigel attempts to sneak away into the night, relieved to have made it this far without detection, when Iris suddenly lunges from the darkness with a shout. She catches him off guard, swinging a training sword at him. In a split second, Nigel twists his body and evades the strike, leaving Iris stunned that he managed to dodge her ambush. He straightens his jacket, haughtily attributing his reflexes to the chevalier blood running through his veins, and chides Iris for her unladylike behavior. Iris, recognizing her brother, remarks that if it had been anyone else, she might have taken them out. Nigel smirks, wiping sweat from his face, admitting that he probably would be dead if he hadn't reacted, but his plan is simply not to get caught. Iris confronts him, deducing that he was planning to sneak into the palace at night. She sighs, noting that his recklessness is a trait he inherited directly from their father. She warns him sternly that if he is apprehended, it won't just be him who suffers, the entire Chevalier family will face punishment. The tension softens as Nigel asks Iris directly if she dislikes Prince Reseda. Iris clarifies that she doesn't dislike him, but she simply has no desire to become the holy maiden or a royal bride. She confesses that she lacks romantic feelings for the prince and sees no reason to rush into an engagement. Nigel offers a cynical smile, noting that such loveless arrangements are standard for noble marriages. Iris, however, refuses to accept this passivity. She declares that this is her only chance to refuse the engagement before their father meets with His Highness the following afternoon. She reasons that Reseda will eventually fall for Camille anyway, so avoiding the engagement now will save everyone trouble. Nigel advises her not to go tonight, suggesting she visit the palace in the morning instead, as Reseda should still be there. He urges her to at least send a messenger properly rather than running off on her own. A fleeting memory surfaces, a moment of vulnerability where Nigel grasped Iris's hand, his face etched with desperation, pleading with her not to leave him behind. Back in the present, Nigel maintains his composure, reinforcing that she should follow the proper steps before meeting the prince. Iris agrees to his logic, deciding to wait until morning. Before she leaves, she smiles warmly at him, remarking on how dependable he has become lately. As she walks away, Nigel watches her go, his expression softening into a look of longing and sadness. He whispers to himself that he wants to be the knight who protects her, even if it is just for a little while longer, acknowledging the deepening loneliness that accompanies their growth.